All right, so here's my question about Michigan. How are they going to play in 2024? Spencer, what are you talking about? Michigan's quarterback situation is currently, for those on podcast, that was me shrugging my shoulders. I mean, could be this, could be that, could be Alex Orji, could not be Alex Orji, the other guys in the room. I don't know. Do you remember the Penn State-Michigan game last year? If you are a Nittany Lion fan, I suggest turning off the show. It's the only time I will ever suggest that you don't listen to or watch this show. Because, of course, I am here to try and get you all to watch. And I thank you for doing so. But the Penn State game, oh, man. I've legitimately never seen anything like it. And so Michigan is returning several starters along their offensive line. They've lost a number of key pass catchers. They are 128th in returning production. 36% from a year ago. That's not much. That's not much. The good news is a foundation of their team last year was the run game. And Blake Corum, he's in the NFL now. But Donovan Edwards is still there. I don't think there's much of a drop-off. I like Blake Corum a lot. I thought Blake Corum was the best running back in last year's NFL draft class, and he would have been the number one running back if I had put together a massive big board. Donovan Edwards can give you at least 85 to 90% of that production level. So, questions at quarterback, returning starters along the offensive line. Wink Martindale comes in to be the defensive coordinator. And those NFL hires, sometimes they click and sometimes they flame out, right? Think about it from a head coaching standpoint. Herm Edwards eventually flamed out. Jed Fish was kind of a home run, and I think he'll succeed at Washington as well. You just never know. And he's putting together, speaking of NFL coaches, he's got Steve Belichick as his defensive coordinator over there in Seattle. But we're talking about Michigan here. Those two teams play again this year, by the way, in Seattle. Michigan currently a 9.5-point road favorite against Washington on October 5th. It was 11.5. That line has moved down. That's a big number for a team that is usually pretty good at home at the very least. They're going to have an extra fired up crowd because Michigan beat them in the national championship game last year. So my question about Michigan is, what percentage of the time are they going to run the football? Because the Penn State game last year was, if memory serves, we had 27 consecutive runs. There was a called pass in the second half for J.J. McCarthy, but it was pass interference, so that doesn't actually go down as a pass attempt. It goes down as a penalty, of course. Every other play was a run. Who was calling those plays? Let's put our thinking caps on. Think. Ooh, I got it. It was Sherrone Moore. He's the head coach at Michigan now. So, Penn State last year, this is honestly maybe the most interesting part about Michigan's season. You've got quarterback questions. Most of your strong returning production is in the run game, which was dynamic last year. You should have a good defense again. The defensive line is going to be nasty. I think there can be some questions in the secondary when they lost, some key guys like Mikey Sanders still. But you can have a really good defensive line. Should have a well-coordinated defense. Is Michigan just going to run the ball like 75% of the time? Legitimate question. If they do, in a pass-happy world of college football, somewhere, Paul Johnson, former Georgia Tech head coach, has just got to be smiling, going, told you guys, you don't need to throw it. You can just run it as often as you want. So here's Michigan's schedule for those who don't have it memorized. They open with Fresno State and Texas and Arkansas State and USC. They play their first 4 games at home. I don't know how Michigan pulls this off every year. I really don't. It seems like they never play on the road early in the season. Anyway, that's not exactly a cupcake schedule. I think it's the exact opposite. Go 3-1 in those games. I think you're doing very well. That means you have a win over either USC or Texas, both teams that I'm high on coming into 2024. Then they host Minnesota. First 5 games are at home. How do they do that? I don't know. Teach me your ways. At Washington, That's their first road game. It's going to be a hostile environment at the very least. At Illinois, host Michigan State, host Oregon, at Indiana, host Northwestern, at Ohio State. So when you think back to last year's game, they play Penn State. They run the ball just about all the time. Penn State was a really good football team. If the 12-team playoff had existed last year, Penn State would have been in. They were 10-2. They lost to Ohio State and Michigan. Where have I heard that one before? If they could do that last year against the playoff team, when I listed their 12 opponents in your head, ask yourself this question. How many of them could you get away with running the ball 75 to 80% of the time? How many? And just grind out like a 17-10 win in true Big Ten fashion. Because the only team on here, well, I see two, maybe three. I see probably three teams I don't think that could work against on paper. Texas, Oregon, Ohio State. Those teams in the trenches, probably too good to just pound the rock all the time. Offenses, probably too dynamic to try and score 14 to 17 points to win the game. But everybody else, don't tell me you can't do that against USC. Look, I like USC's offseason as much as anyone. We haven't seen the results yet. They've improved. They're better on paper. Lincoln Riley team's still not exactly known for being the greatest at tackling or playing defense or being physical. Look at what Utah did during the last couple of years. They ran the football a bunch, did a little play action. That game's at home, too, for Michigan on CBS. Oh, man. It's supposed to be the SEC on CBS, but it's not anymore. It's not anymore. So if Michigan was good enough last year to just run the ball almost exclusively to beat a 10-2 Penn State team, does Sherrone Moore just line up this year and say, you know what? We're just going to pound the rock. And we're going to control the clock. We are going to look like last year's Michigan team, like early 2010 Jim Harbaugh Stanford teams. We are going to run the ball and the clock into the ground. Clock doesn't stop on first downs. Let's shorten the game. Let's play to our strengths. Trust our defense. And be physical running the ball. And just call a play action pass every now and then. That's what I'm fascinated to see. The question is, can you do that and get to the Big Ten championship game or the college football playoff? Can you go 10-2, which would include beating Texas? Like if Michigan were to not make the Big Ten title game and make the college football playoff, they'd have to beat Texas. They have to beat Texas, but then they could lose to Ohio State and Oregon. Buckeyes and Ducks go play for the Big Ten championship. Michigan would then be in the playoff at 10-2 with a win over Texas. That's absolutely going to get you in. Can they win just one of those games? They win that Texas game, lose the other two. Can they do it that way? I don't know. My gut says you need a little bit more against those teams. I mean, you're going up against Will Howard, Dylan Gabriel, and Quinn Ewers. Michigan's probably going to be a quarterback deficit in all three of those games. But we know Sherrone Moore likes to scheme and run game, likes to enforce physicality, and I wonder just how much they're going to be able to do that this year. I think they're going to do it a lot, and a lot of games will look like Iowa games last year or the Penn State game a season ago. I'm going to enjoy it no matter what. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. It's winner take all time in the NBA and in the NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every playoff shot count. You can get your college football gambling fix as well. You can bet win totals, conference title odds, national championship odds, anything you could possibly want, even individual games, like the one I talked about on yesterday's show, Miami and Florida. That's Miami minus 3.5 in the Swamp. If you love the Canes, bet Mario Cristobal and company. If you think Billy Napier is going to get it done, you can bet the Gators. Everything you want, FanDuel's got it. Check them out. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.